All right. So shall we kick it off?
Yeah, sure. You go.
All
ahead.
right. Let me stare at one of the cameras so whenever we edit this video, it doesn't look too jarring. To everybody watching at home, welcome to People of Penang podcast, where we get the insight into who the people of Penang are. I know that sounds like a double, less creative, but we are here at the social cultural justice art to talk about art in itself and social cohesion. And we have our guest for here today, Mr. Gunabalan, who is the artist himself, Mr. Joe Sidek, festival organizer extraordinaire, as well as president of Penang Arts Council, Dato Ong, and we also have the senior management of Arts Ed as well. So these are the various people within our society that we would like to talk about. Yeah, isn't that right, Eugene?
Yep, that's what we do.
And earlier on, we were discussing different things, and you came up with a really good analogy. Actually,
Oh yeah, you know
something
what?
about sandcastles or something.
You know when what comes to my mind when I hear social cohesion, right?
Yeah.
I think of sandcastles. Yeah, because you see, a sandcastle is a balance. If everybody is the grain of sand, what keeps them together is the dampness. If it's too dry, it collapses. If it's too hard, if it's too much water, it just turns to sludge. So it's a balance. And I think what makes social cohesion the glue is trust.
Right.
That's the thing that makes it. So I imagine it as a sandcastle, just correct amount of dampness.
Wow,
of trust.
that's pretty deep. Like
I
the
think we're
fact
going
that
to have
it's
a great discussion today.
yeah, that was a great discussion that we had, and I want to continue it. Yeah.
Guess here.
But as the guest, what do you guys think about that analogy in terms of social cohesion? Is as, I guess you could say, as not exactly flexible, but more like finite as a sandcastle. Like it's very, you need the right moisture, the right elements to have it stick. But what do you say?
Balance.
Yeah, that balance.
Yeah.
But in terms of your artwork as well, what I love during the opening, you mentioned that it was also a commentary on the development of Malaysia, the Indian community in general. I was wondering maybe you could do a deep dive on that and explain a bit more.
You want me to talk about the Indians? Huh?
I kind of figured we have until tomorrow morning. Let's do it.
This place itself, actually, if you know the history of Penang, there are several prominent Indians landed in Penang. One of the earliest one was Chola dynasty emperor. He landed near, Bujang Valley. Bujang Valley is a place where the Chola dynasty people it's not actually first landed. They landed there because South China Sea in the east coast of Malaysia, during the time when they come, around October, November, December, it's monsoon season. They cannot travel up the South China Sea in the east coast of Malaysia. So they have to stop at Bujang Valley, unload all their goods, and then climb up Kedah Peak. And from Kedah Peak, they can go down and they go down at Kelantan. And from Kelantan, they go to Cambodia. Angkor Wat was built by Chola dynasty emperor. So there's one of the earliest Indians who landed in Penang. And the next important person landing in Penang was Francis Knight. They say he's the founder of Penang, but they claim it. They claim they are the founders of Penang. But they actually, if you across this hall, you see the Fort Cornwallis. Fort Cornwallis, and in front of Fort Cornwallis is the sea. That's where the Francis Knight boat stopped. And he used the cannon and loaded with gold coins. And the gold coins were stolen from the temples in India. And they exploded it out and then asked the Indian coolies where he brought them also, go cut the trees. And they went to cut and collect them. Maybe if you want to search for some gold coin, you go look around. Maybe here also might find some gold. Indian gold coin. It will be doubly expensive now. And then that's how the fort was built by the Indian coolies at the time. 1785, I think, 1780 something. Yeah, that's the first time the Indians stepped inside, my forefathers. And then this hall is very significant for me. Just because of this Indian stepping in. That's the history of the place where the Indians stopped here. And then I have an exhibition trying to give justice to these people who came there. They were the earliest people. They were not the British government, it is the British traders, the British East India Company. And they were here to make profit. So they actually plundered India and came into Penang, and somehow or other they convinced Kedah to give it to them. Penang was given to them. And later, as time went on, the East India Company had to hand over the place to the British government, where representative of the Indian and Malayan people were supposed to represent in the parliament. So that's when they started to look for land. Instead of just spice, at first they came for spice. Later, because of the Industrial Revolution, they wanted the land to grow rubber. So to grow rubber in Malaysia, they told the Indian, before they told that also, they made the Indians poor. There were stories of the British banning all making of cloths in India. So no factory of cloth were allowed, because they were already planning to make cloth in England. And they get their cotton from America. They get their slaves from Africa. So there's a whole chain of events. So this is the story of the Indians. And my grandfather came from India.
Actually, maybe we can take a moment. Would you like some water, just to wash things down?
Came from India. Sorry for my jerky speech.
Oh, no problem.
Understand you perfectly.
Now, you brought up the interesting fact that, when the British built Fort Cornwallis, right, is a lot based on labor from the Indian, even in the engineering corps, like the sepoys and all that. It's interesting that they are actually, even not talking about Chola, before Fort Cornwallis, actually the British were in these parts since around the 1600s. They actually went to Sumatra first. I think Joe and I went to Bengkulu, right? There's a giant fort called Marlborough, which is bigger than this one. The British had all this presence here, but they only succeeded in controlling the Straits of Malacca, starting with Penang, Malacca, and Singapore. And when they managed to control the world's, even today, one of the world's busiest sea lanes, that's where they became a real empire. And that's why I think what brings people here as a magnet from different cultures is because of the enormous trade. The Straits of Malacca is a magnet. It brings everybody. That's why you have Indochina. It's basically in between the two great civilizations.
Actually, I remember when we had the podcast with Dr. Nasha, the archaeologist who found that statue older than Angkor. Didn't he mention that our port cities were globalized before globalization was a thing? We had various mixed culture from Arab, Persian, local Jawis, Jawi Peranakans, various other Peranakans, and Indian Chinese communities as well. That, remember, I came up with, we were so cool and our party was so wild that the Arabs and Persians wanted to join us in trade, and so did the Portuguese. So this idea of the fact that we've always been globalized, then coming down to the artwork itself, I do believe that this solo exhibition, it's one of those things where this is what real art is. You have to have something
Yep.
to say. You have to have a message. It's not about like, oh, look, I went to art school. Look at my painting. It's
Yep.
so beautiful, right? Look at
Yep.
me and my degrees. I feel this visceral way of communicating is what art is meant to be. You know, I mean, but we can all differ in our opinions. Actually, Joe, president of Penang Arts Council. What is? Am I on the right track, or what do you think? No, I'm not on the right. See, this is why I love Joe. What do you think, my man?
Art is very subjective. There's no such thing as I like, you have to like. You paint because you want to. You don't paint. I mean, some people need to paint for money, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But can we go back to subject of social justice?
Oh yeah, we can. I just thought you had something to say, because I was just reading
I
your
will add
body
something
language.
about the thing about what was the word you used? Cohesion. Yeah, it actually is the will of the people and the will of the government that will have cohesion. Without that, it will not work.
Well, let's go back to the artwork. You're right. We should focus on artwork itself. When I look at a lot of your pieces, as abstract as it is, I felt that it was telling a much deeper story. Are a lot of these paintings from personal experiences?
There are two things there. One is about art itself. The other one is the history of the Indian. One of the things the British did was bring workers from India down here. One of the first things they did was to make them plant the rubber tree and tap the rubber tree. It is for their industry. But in terms of art, and when I was in Penang, I used to collect the driftwood from boats and arrange them into, they call it constructivism. And that's what brought me to USM and brought me to USA. They liked the kind of work I do. Those were the days. Then when I was in BM, where Chong Eng was sent to BM to stand for Parliament. At that time, on the first day itself, when we went, our house flooded. When it got flooded, a lot of my paintings got destroyed at that time, and also a lot of paper there. And with the paper, I turned it into a creative artwork. And that work, you see, the fish in that work.
Fish in the
is-
water.
Yeah, from the water flood. And the fish is actually reminds me of Chong Eng. She was the only representative of DAP. In like 1995, she was elected. She was the only one. So to remember that, I made that fish. The lonely struggle.
Wow.
Wow, that's really deep.
For our listeners who are not aware, Chong Eng is the girlfriend,
Wonderful
not the
love
wife.
story.
You know,
Yeah,
honestly,
yeah,
for
yeah,
me,
yeah,
I really do enjoy in this
yeah,
day and
yeah, yeah,
age of like celebrity divorces that we
Yeah.
actually have people that love each other. I don't know if that, for me, I feel that's important. You know, that you and your wife are still very much in love, that you made pieces of art in reflection of your experiences with her. You know, for me, I think that's beautiful. You know,
Yeah, it's beautiful. That's cohesion at the couple level.
oh, from a marriage
Yeah,
level.
yeah.
So it goes into the family.
And Mo, don't forget our usual. We like a good origin story.
Oh my God.
yes,
Okay,
yes,
okay. Let's
yes,
go with origin stories.
Yes. So in People of Penang, we are not just talk about topics. We believe the topic comes out through the stories of the actual people. So we usually ask people, how do you become what you are? Yeah.
Well, we
So-
got like what?
yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4.
So
people.
I think I want to ask Guna is that, what brought you into art?
Oh, my interest in art is from school days. At that time, when I was standard 1, standard 2, standard 3, even the teachers disagreed with my way of painting because they think my elder brothers would have done that. And then another funny story was when I was St. Xavier's, where I was already in the secondary, from Form 2. The art teacher brought clay
Yep.
and also some bottles for
Yep.
art to sing.
Yep.
So I kagao, the Chinese say, being clever,
Uh-huh.
took the bottle and then covered it with the clay and made it into a pot.
Mhm.
And the art teacher
Mhm.
was searching for his bottle.
Mhm.
And then I told him I put the bottle inside there. Without knowing, he gave me one tight slap. After that, I didn't go to his class anymore.
Was he the brother that started the La Salle's University of Arts in Singapore? Some of the teachers you had?
Teachers, you mean teaching in the secondary?
The St. Xavier's, one of the brothers started the, La Salle, right?
La Salle, I think so, yeah.
art school in Singapore.
So we're just witnessing two Xavierians connecting on a podcast. This happens, it happens a lot more than expected.
We discovered that school has a lot to do with social cohesion. It's pretty critical.
I can tell
Through
you
all
both
of our
are
guests.
intergenerationally connecting. Just by being Xaviers.
Yeah. So you come from a very distinguished, family, right? Your brothers was a, editor, right? And
In my family, we are 7 brothers and 2 sisters.
yeah.
A lot of them might know my brother Sugu on Sunday. He's my eldest brother.
Was the editor of the Star, right?
He's Star. He's one of the earliest person who started the Star newspaper. He was with Straits Times.
Yep.
And then when the Star started, he was pioneer the Star paper. He has passed away just 2 years ago.
I see.
Sad to hear that.
COVID passed away.
Yeah, through our podcast, one of the things that also is the shared experience. I think COVID was a shared experience.
Oh, that was one.
In like half the episodes, people were sharing how they coped, through their professional lives, like how the Spice Garden continued, how a coffee shop continued. These are all the shared experiences that, that lead to social cohesion, right? The shared experience.
I think maybe Dato Ong, you might have a on-ground experience on like what happened with COVID and development over time. Because it's been 5 years. It's been a while, and your work brings you to like the on-ground level with developing the women community. I was also a part of your one where you were helping female entrepreneurs, which I thought was great. So your honest opinion, when you look at the stratosphere from COVID until now, was there any meaningful development that we've prepared ourselves?
See. Actually, I'm intrigued by what you all started with when you talk about a balance.
Sandcastles.
Balance, yeah. So, you say if it's too dry, the sandcastle will not stand too much and then it will just float off and all that. And it brings back, because I'm coming from a gender perspective, right? So in art, I think it's also important that there should be a balance. Okay. To be frank, sometimes if you look at some of the art that's being perpetuated, it shows women to be very feminine, very caring, very nurturing. And it actually, because that's been translated in art, and that's how people perceive. Okay, so I think there should be opportunity for this change in how we depict women. Okay, because if not, then it's going to be status quo as how people still perceive women to be on this other side. Whereas actually, the women now, because of the change, because of COVID, they have actually more opportunities with technology. Actually, women are stepping out. So I really wish, that's my wish list also, that, art should depict more future-looking, future-ready, looking into the future, how women should be. How do we characterize women? No more the old way, because it's very stereotyped, and we'll be stuck in there. So this is a challenge that, I just want to bring forward. There should be a balance in the way that we see things, even for men. Can men be depicted to be feminine? Question, I don't need an answer.
Was that rhetorical?
You will know yourself, right? So this is where I think art can play a very important role. How we portray women and men, because that's how the public will perceive. Okay, and on top of that, I think if you look into the balance, as we say, a lot of producers and also choreographers and that those decision making, even in the art and the cultural world, is actually dominated by men. So we don't have that sort of balance, as you say, to see where is the direction of the art, how do we go from here? I think we are, in a way, in a crossroad to see where we should be guiding, so that when they talk about social cohesion, social justice, it must involve all. It cannot be leaving somebody behind. So I think art and craft and culture probably need to change. Yeah, it is something which is actually with us. There are certain things which are very good in culture. You know how filial piety is a culture that Asians are very proud of. Yeah, but there are certain cultures that women should be this way, men should be this way, and all that. I think there should be more discussion about how we can change that mindset too.
Do you think art is a strong tool for that? Because like art builds up culture, culture builds up a civilizational identity.
Yes, precisely.
Correct on that one, anthropologically, right? So in your work, in terms of, I'm assuming arts ed also does the development of future artists and opportunities and so on, right? Do you think that's correct for me to assume that culturally it's built on, and art is broad? It could be music, it could be poems, it could be traditional dance. How important do you think it is for us to seep into the future generations this appreciation of our local art, emphasis on our local art, so they can forever remember the identity? Is that important?
I think in arts ed, I think I will speak more from the youth part. And I think today's topic is also is very matched to what we are doing, because we actually combine arts, culture, social history, and education together. I probably want to say we are at the Zafan economic rise. I would like to refer it to that, because we work with a lot of schools and a lot of young people from schools where the education system actually wouldn't actually provide a lot of platform for exchanges of culture, exchanges of the arts as well. So why I say Zafan is you probably, one dish, let's say you are pork ketchup.
I guess.
I'm maybe the achar. But then we make a balanced dish from a different parts. A lot of the time, what we are doing is actually providing the platform, the bridges, to actually allow youth to understand the past from history, get out from the classroom to see the past, but touching, sense, feel it in town, and then they innovate, so that their voices get to actually express through the arts. So we work with a lot of artists, I think, to let the children to not just express through text or through verbal, but they could draw, they could dance, they could also do many more other things that actually could express, because I think the innovations that makes the future. So we're not just staying in the past, but actually allow the young to actually say something about what they think about the past and what they want for future. I think arts is actually a very good kind of a tool for also different groups to take away the language boundary. Today, we do not need to speak in English or Bahasa, but we can communicate through the arts, even though we couldn't speak the same language.
It's a universal language.
Yeah.
Yoke Pin, I want to ask you something, because you said before in an interview and that that students find it hard to associate, art and history, because it is at a more of a regional and national level, and you emphasize the importance of local, links, right? It's more tangible. Like you can study, in history where Penang is just a chapter or even a few paragraphs or even para or whatever. The national syllabus of any country can never cover all, right? So I also wrote an article about local history. I think you were talking about the same thing coming from there, right? Maybe you can share the interesting board game you came out to get people to know more about Chow.
You guys did Bansan, right? Is that the game?
It's Bansan.
Oh, that is a really good game. I still play it at home, like competitively.
I think maybe before the Bansan, I think probably more the performances that we actually did. We did topics about Second World War in Penang.
Mm-hmm.
We did the early Penang stories, how the other, not the mainstream story. So oral history by the grandparents of the children. So they actually interview their grandparents, and those stories being incorporated into the open stage, on the opera stage. They perform, but using the more kind of traditional contemporarized performances. I'm not sure whether some of you watched like Ronggeng Merdeka before, Kisah Pulau Pinang, and it's actually open for everybody to watch it. I think the interesting thing is we found that the old auntie, a Chinese auntie, the story being included, but because she's not so interactive with other culture or the other group, but by watching a public show that we put together, she could see an overall view, the story from the other groups performed by the children, by the group. So that is actually very, it's a very different experience. She actually told me, but now she passed away already. She said, "Oh, you mean there's an Indian Muslim story like this in Georgetown?" But by watching that show on the opera stage, that's where she understands. And the stage performance was performed in multiple languages, but she understands. So I would say that taking local story, connect the young people to the grandparents' story, to the buku text, the textbook. But then I think they also, they also talk about a bigger story. So that's where they find the connection to the big history.
So it's kind of like philosophy tells you how to think, art tells you how to execute your thoughts in an expressive way, whether it's traditional stories, cultural stories. And actually, I do have a question in terms of execution about your artwork, since I'm looking at it right now. Is there any metaphorical reason or any specific reason why some of your portraits are looking up? Because usually in a way that's a metaphor for looking to the future or looking for hope. Is it something along those lines?
As you interpret. But my intention was mainly looking, after going to BM, I saw the railway line, and at the time they were changing the slip rate to concrete. They wanted to bring the electric railway. So I wanted to use the slip rate to make sculpture. So to do sculpture, I have to plan. I don't know how to cut or whatever. So I do some sketch. Those sketches came like that. I didn't want to impose any value into my wood. I wanted the wood to represent itself as the wood. So don't impose value into other things. As an artist, even the medium, I don't impose my value into the medium. I like the medium to show itself. So what you see is the wood kind of thing. Wood, it doesn't look like wood, but the straight lines are all from the wood. That how I'm going to cut and how I'm going to fix it together and make it into a sculpture. So it's a process still on. But when the sculpture comes out, I won't paint them. I will use the wood as it is. So the wood will show itself up. So one of the things you have to understand is that don't ever impose your value into others. Let them flower themselves, become a flower.
Let's go ahead.
Yes.
Can ask question, right?
Okay, it's a free flow podcast.
No, you
Because
can just
it's so intriguing to know what is it when you see a piece of wood, what really triggers you or inspires you, or what is it that you see in the wood that say, okay, I'm going to accentuate something, or what was your flow of thoughts, when you come to do this type of art?
When I saw the slipper rates, are already in my imagination that I want to use it, and I don't want to turn it into something else. But it was as much as minimal as possible. I want to cut it or reshape it. But I think the next exhibition, I already got an idea as I was sitting that I would use the slipper rate as it is. And in art is such an open thing that you can use it. There are art movements that don't use or change the value of it, bring it. So I already, if you understand the Western art is such an open thing. So many things has happened that the art itself is like an octopus. with many tentacles. They can grow into many things. So art is something like that.
Guna, I got the question. I'm curious. A lot of these features, gentleman with a beard, is it subconsciously you or is...
As I'm doing already, I don't want to do the same thing with another thing. So I see, I also have a beard. It is not that my beard, but as a design, it imposes itself on me to do that.
I see.
As a design.
Your team seems to be a lot of resilience, right? You resolve.
But here's the question though. Like we were talking about how you were mentioning in the West is quite open. So many things happen. How would we know that we have a movement of any sort? Is there like a marker, or is there like a Joe Sidek who says, "Hey, this is a movement, Malaysian"? I don't know. How's it go, Joe?
Can I call you Dato Sri? Because I think he started it really well by starting about history, and then I think Dato also mentioned history. I think that something that's really wrong with us is that we've always followed a Western benchmark, Western psyche, Western goalpost for the arts. When the Asian, I'm a big fan of Tagore and the idea of Asianism, and we have thousands of years of culture and spiritually, and we are so grounded, and yet we look at the West for our benchmark for what we do, whether it's in art or festivals or culture, when we are the ones that have thousands of years. I mean, you mentioned it too, it's our stories. It's not the Western benchmark or goalpost that we should go for. I think that's one of the weakest points where I've been looking at this all over Asia. We celebrate a Western benchmark for festivals, not an Asian, when we ourselves we're like thousands of years, and we were Hindus and Buddhists before we became Muslims. So there's a lot of layering that's so interesting in our culture.
Yeah.
So I love the fact that you started off with this Indian story, and I thought like, wow, this is so interesting, because I feel personally the Indian narrative is quite marginalized here in Penang.
Yep.
Yeah, I myself have felt it and thought about it and thought like, wow, it's always pushing a Malay thing. Most of it's mainstream Malay, and then the Chinese are very strong and they don't need help. They can do it on their own. So the really marginalized Indian community needs help. No, it's true. I mean, I really feel that the fault lies in us, this thing called cohesiveness. If we don't work together, it'll never work.
Yes. Joe, you bring up a very good point about, using the West as a benchmark, because for example, even this talk we have here, we consciously don't want to do, the typical, starting from the Greeks was the debates. It basically says that I'm going to prove you wrong. Somebody has to be right. Someone has to be wrong.
Like a zero-sum
It's a zero-sum game. And polemics are the even worse. Just my point of view. Basically, a polemic is just one point of view. Asian culture has a lot to do with. That's why some people say, the Japanese, you cannot get a no from them or yes from them, because it's just a collaborative thing. Yes, I mean it's collaborative search for the truth. It's not about. That's why it's not a hard talk, right? We don't put you online, we fire you. Hard talk. Why hard talk? We just having a talk. It's just cakap saja.
Well, a lot of it has. Yeah. Because of our general history. I was watching this Harvard professor give a lecture, and one thing that stuck with me was he mentioned when the Portuguese and Dutch first came to our area, they were so alien in the way they do business, because Asians, Southeast Asians or Greater Asia, including China and India, when we did business back in the day, we did it with the intention of having a long-term friendship. Like the idea is you may be sailing to my village now. When you come back, I remember your name, I remember your family, everything, so on and so forth. But when the Dutch, Portuguese, and English came, it was very transactional. It's more like, how much, there it is, I take it, I go.
Yeah,
and there was I guess you could say, a cultural clash there. And now that we live in a very more like Western-centric world, the transactional capitalist way has become the norm.
Yeah.
And with the podcast, I was hoping to bring that back, where we're not here to judge or anything, but let's understand. Let's have fun conversations.
So to be clear, it's not to get into this thing called dichotomic thinking, where it's either or, West or East. I think Penang is lucky because we live in between two worlds.
Oh yeah,
the best of both worlds. Why settle for one? Let's just jump on it. That's what we do. The best of both worlds. Yeah. Goreng lah. People say Rojak. I wrote an article before. I said no, Penang is not Rojak. Rojak is still a local dish. It is actually mee goreng. You got Chinese noodles, you got tau kwa, you got European tomato sauce, Indian spices, Chinese wok. Oh my God, everything.
It's like the little story
Malay
of
cucur, everything. Yeah, it's a one mashup.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, back to the whole concept of like.
I think I will got a question for Joe.
Oh, go for it.
Yeah. So when the Georgetown Festival was held, right? I think you did a terrific job in curating all the different things Penang can do. And were you consciously trying to build to help people understand each other, all those things during those times?
Thank you. Georgetown Festival is last season's Prada jacket. I kind of like to move on to a new jacket. So I don't really like to talk much about it.
Oh, no problem. No problem.
I love doing it. It was great, but I want to move on,
Yep.
I'd like to talk about a subject that's recent.
Okay, go ahead.
The attack on lack of Malay representation in the Boria that happened recently. I kept very quiet when the press asked me, the public asked me, because I was just very quiet. I didn't want to get into the politics of it all. But I felt as if the true fault lies in us Malays. Because how do we expect YB Chow to know Malay content or any of the Chinese or non-Malay YBs? So we have a deputy chief minister who's Malay. We have very, very, very strong Malay YBs. We have Pemenang who actually attacked that whole video thing. These are the people who should be carrying the torch or providing platform for Malay narratives. So something has gone wrong. If 50 years you've not put the Malay narratives out there, you don't expect a government of 4 years or 8 years to change the dynamics. So, and instead of blaming, I keep telling the Malays, we should step up and we should find ways. Boria cannot survive because Boria is an art form that's not global. They want to champion it as a UNESCO listed thing. Yes, as an art form you can. But without the dana, do you think Boria will survive? Without the funding mechanism? So I think the Malays need to rethink about traditional art forms. How do we put it on a global level? So that's, for me, more important than Georgetown Festival. Because it's like, where do we go from there and what do we learn from that?
I'm not talking just a festival. I'm talking about, you have always been using art, getting people together in festivals in general. That's what I brought it up.
It's important to use art as, I think she's done a good job using platforms to bring people together as a safe, shared space to learn and share. And I think Penang is a great example of multiculturalism because look at this room and then you see every single race.
Quite diverse.
Even the white man is there, and white women too. And I love the idea that Penang was cosmopolitan when KL was mud flanks.
Yep.
So we lead the way.
Yes, you brought up really good thing. What you're saying there is called social trust, which is the main ingredient of cohesion, right? We trust. We put the art here. We don't expect people to, get angry or we say something and somebody
Hopefully
throws an
not.
egg. I hope there's no eggs coming. That's called social trust. A society with high social cohesion means that we can chat with each other. We don't feel threatened.
But I think you can argue. You can. I think you're allowed to argue, and I think
respectfully.
One of the weakest things is like 20 years ago, 2001, they had a meeting in Kuala Lumpur where they had all the big arts names in a forum to discuss censorship, which is what I thought we were going to discuss today. And they brought in everybody, all the big names from Kuala Lumpur. What they didn't bring was the Malay representation, the other side, that gave them the space to speak. Why are the Malays so afraid of this? So I think it has to be both sides. It has to be everyone represented and given a chance to speak.
I just realized that this talk is like multifaceted because we're not just talking about one demographic. It seems there's a commonality that you're saying from the Malay demographic and then yours from the Indian perspective as well. There seems to be, like, we're not getting the doors open that we need to transcend to the international level. Am I getting it right? Is that? Or do you think that we're not?
Guna wants to say something.
That brings me to what we need in Malaysia is cross-cultural education.
Oh, here, I gotta, yes.
The moment we have cross-cultural education, we go into understanding, not what they call the word, the tahan. Your behavior, I tahan your behavior.
Oh, toleration.
Tolerate.
Yeah.
Don't tolerate, you understand.
Yep.
I think I've come to realize that Jesus was right. Forgive them, Lord, for they do not know, or they don't understand, or they don't care. So we cannot wait for the government. I mean, I'm not against any government. Yeah, I'm for all our government.
Literally in a government building, yes.
Yeah, no, but we
We are
cannot
ignorant.
wait, because if they don't know how to do, we as citizens should make the move.
So in essence, it should be like a grassroots movement.
Penang is, I think the beautiful part is we don't complain, we do things.
Yeah.
Sometimes without anybody's help. We just berdikari lah. We just do it.
That's Penang Lang lah.
Yeah,
The spirit of Penang is always there.
Yeah.
There's talk about Penang Lang. A lot of people from outside actually get jealous of us. In terms of what we do and all that, culture during emergencies, how we come together and put ourselves together. Maybe Penang could be the trigger point or to be the catalyst when we talk about social cohesion.
Actually,
We'll start from there.
You're not entirely wrong, because you know why? Just on Armenian Street alone, you have the former base of Sun Yat-sen, who in 1911 changed China from a dynasty to one of republic. Well, I want to say republic, because after that it became communist, but changed the whole face of China. And there were other revolutions as well, like the Kingdom of Kedah back in the day. The Sultan of Kedah actually took refuge in Penang, went back to conquer Kedah from the Siamese. So it does seem to me that Penang is like the place where you fund really crazy movement ideas, and if you can make it in Penang, you kind of could change the world a bit. Is that something?
And I really agree with what Joe said, that it has to be on inclusiveness. Trust is one thing, but inclusivity is the key factor, for this to happen, because we cannot leave anybody behind. That is actually the goal of it. And because I see the richness, when we come together, rather than everybody working in silos. When they come together, you can see, it's actually portraying ourselves, our identity to the global because of our cohesiveness and through the diversity of the culture that we have. We should be very proud of it, in fact.
Oh yeah, we should.
Can I say something?
Yeah, obviously, Joe.
It's about you. It's about you.
Go for it.
I think the state should take notice of what Anak-Anak Kota does, because it starts with educating the young. And what we failed is to introduce or expose young people to our history and culture. So the module of what they've been doing should actually be state level or federal level.
Actually, I agree with you on that one. The disconnect between our own cultural
And that's
history.
another important ingredient with all this to work about the young, right? Who influences the child the most?
YouTubers.
Mothers, come on.
No, I mean now
always mothers and
TikTok.
fathers
Mothers are
also
working.
important.
Mothers are big. They send to childcare.
Okay, seriously,
please don't
moms
take
in this
childcare
room.
advice from Mo. Don't get
How you send to childcare? Do you?
All I'm saying is that, there comes to a point where children are more influenced by what they see in the media. But I think this is maybe where you can come in with your perspective, since you are in the process of teaching that generation, the Gen Zs and Gen Alphas, right? Is there anything that we need to know in terms of, are they more cohesive or are they divisive?
I think the young one now actually see themselves as a global citizen because of so much information they can get just by touching, the screens and all. But I think it's the connectivity. You can't actually connect to something, like the web, but you still have to connect to the people, that just outside of your room or outside of your house. Because, we know that there's so little connection. So what we found last time, kids actually think, oh, I want to go to a phone. But now they actually feel more curious about meeting with people. They want to connect to people. It's just that they don't have the skills and tools. So a lot of the time, I think we have to make that bridges and the platform. Yeah, because I think now easily in school or tuition, spend about 10 hours in your one day. The rest 8 hours you go on the bed. The other, how many more hours? So if you actually don't have proper program for cross-cultural program and all, there's no other opportunity for you to actually get to know other people. So that's where I think a lot more efforts that have to actually push. Like one thing that we really found, arts actually really break the barriers, where they could actually relate to a lot of the languages here, the people, the activities, and the food, everything, and then they use it to translate to anything they like to express. So I think that's actually one way that we found that it works. And yeah, we have a lot of modules. We try to push it to at least the state to be implemented it to like, oh, all the kids at 12 years old before they get into secondary school, they must go through this tour or they must go through this, but I don't think we get that support. But it's so important. I dare not look into the Kementerian so big, but at least Penang, I think we have sufficient of, the contribution of so many people to build those modules. And the rich resources, like, Dato Ong said just now, is so easily accessed. You really just walk out and you can study your whole 2-3 years about, things that are on the street. You couldn't really find other place. So that's something where after like so many years we are working here, there's still so much resources that we could actually connect to. So I think we should really, go into working that.
So then my question would then be, what is the current situation in 2024, 15th of December, which is where we're recording? Like, do we see the positive elements already sprouting? Like, we're always talking about, and one of the things I've noticed, okay, this is my, like, I guess my opinion, my commentary, is that whenever we have people talking on podcasts or shows, or even TV shows on Astro or Media Prima, it's always like, we should plant the seed, watch it grow. So my question is, where is that plant now? Is it growing? Does it need fertilizer? Where is it at? Is it flowering?
A lot of people are ready. I think they're just missing some resources. I think to make it a little bit more growing. Like I said, module is there, the people get trained. I think they just need to have more people, facilitator, to go out, to go to at least all the schools. If you can say, don't
like
dream,
go directly.
Yeah, don't dream so much at other state, but at least Penang, I would say, that to facilitate this learning. I think is there, but it needs a little bit more kind of help in terms of the resources, I would say.
Money.
I would say money and also people to train.
I think Gunabalan.
Let me say something. I used to teach art, and one of the things after finishing one session of artwork, after they finish their work, I asked one of them to put up their artwork and get the group there, and everybody must have 2 questions that he doesn't like the painting or the artwork. You just don't say you don't like. You have to say why you don't like. At the same time, you also must come up with why you like that painting and say it. By this itself, you start seeing the growth of the students in reasoning out. You simply cannot say, I don't like you. Why I don't like you, there must be what. You have to accept that. Nobody should get angry over whatever anybody says anything. And anybody saying also, you don't like, but you must say what you don't like. But at the same time, you have to say what is the thing that you like most about the painting or what. It was one of my most important sessions I had. And I can get a lot of feedback from the students. They were quite active. Some of them purposely say, I don't like the painting, and then they just blabber out. And it became a fun class.
You bring up something very important for social cohesiveness, because this kind of thinking is sometimes we keep on focusing on critical thinking, right? It's easy to be a critic. You can say, I don't like this food, I don't like this art, I don't like this thing. But, you got to be also constructive and also be the solution. It's easy to come up with a list of what's wrong with other people's stuff. But that will definitely won't, humans fundamentally have emotions. Nobody, no matter how, likes to be smashed for their. As an artist, I understand too. If you spend 10 hours doing or 10 days doing something and somebody just lists a long thing, you do not want to engage in conversation anymore. So I think what you're saying is something called the difference between criticism and critique. Critique is a give and take. The receiver is willing to listen to the constructive one, and also the giver is trying to help. This is, I think, what in social cohesion is called, we think that we are doing for each other's common good. Like we don't distrust our intentions. So I think your method, no matter what words you use it, is that thing is working. It's a consultation.
Yeah.
It's a consultation. I'm consulting with you. I kind of like this. I don't like this. Maybe like this, and you say yes, maybe like this.
Well, yeah,
So
because
it's constructive.
every expression of
Thank
anger
you for bringing
is,
that up,
oh,
Guna. Guna, that's a wonderful way to.
Yeah.
It is, because the thing is, right, every expression of anger is an expression of unmet needs, as the quotation says, which means if somebody says, I don't like this artwork, it just means that they feel, in my opinion, that their artwork is not good. Hence why does this person who's not better than him or her gets to have a solo exhibition. That's where I see the jealousy comes from. Because everybody who criticizes is because they are in pain at some level, whether it's not just art, but also in life in general. The one who opens their mouth and complains the most is the saddest person in the room. But I think when we're thinking about understanding through art and philosophy and all these soft skills, being able to express that anger is what I find important. Hence why I'm always about the message in art. It's about expressing the anger, because throughout my life, when I don't express my anger, it just explodes into a nuclear bomb. I hate myself in that state. It's the worst beast mode ever. And I think that could apply to everybody else. You are the worst when you're suffering the worst. But if we can, I don't know, talk to each other in some way and be like, hey, how can we help each other?
I got a question for Guna. I think we all sort of agree that, how to get there is to have empathy. There's no way we can trust each other if we don't feel, even try to put ourselves in other shoes. Long ago, you're a pioneer of some video arts, right? In the Balakrishnan, right? You were talking about the faceless, right? You're giving voice to them.
Faceless people.
Yes, the faceless people. That is like empathy, right? Because you can't actually think of someone if they're faceless and they're not hurt. Maybe you can continue what you were thinking.
My friend, American lecturer, I used to assist him. He brought out an artwork, but unfortunately, I don't think so. The USM has kept it. It was actually after finishing his period of lecturing and all. After about I think about 2 semesters, he came out with an artwork. He looked for broken potteries, and then he went to Gunabalan Street where there's a pottery shop corner. It's no more now there. And then he asked for broken pottery. He was surprised why this white man is asking for broken pottery. He was willingly, all that was reminded, and gave it to him. 2 baskets full of broken. He took it back to USM, and then he arranged it in such a way, and you use the camera, the TV camera, and use it to arrange it. He arranged 2 faces, one a Malay face, Malay lecturer's face, and a Chinese lecturer's face. And then the title of the artwork was Face to Face. Face to Face. At that time, I really liked it, and that has actually influenced our way.
Wow.
When he showed you on the ground, you see it's rubbish. But when you see the TV screen, there are 2 faces there, and then it's 2 faces, and then he chose to show a Malay and a Chinese. I think there must have something happen in the staff room.
I see. Wow.
Or he has actually watched the politics down here.
I see. So this.
And he didn't say anything. He just left it there.
Yes.
So that it actually reflects what the media can do. Very clearly, without saying, he already said it.
Yes.
Any event, any situation, you can turn it to whatever you want to if you put your mind into it. Either you can create a problem or create a creative cohesiveness. It's up to you what kind of person you are. So that sums it all in, he did it. So I was kind of influenced by his idea.
it's always wonderful to hear the influence of an artist. You can learn a lot from it. Like what we see here is also from there. So in this case, I can sense that like this piece of art here, you're trying to give the faceless rubber tappers a voice, right? And feel.
Mostly rubber tappers, not the rubber tappers. The faceless one are the railway workers.
The railway workers.
The rubber tappers really, that one is negaraku, tanah tumpahnya darahku. That really says what they have suffered through. Underneath is a Tamil Sindhya Ratham Marandhu Desam. The spilled blood, nation forgot. That is the painting.
Although this is not called a retrospective, I think this is a retrospective of your life, your artwork. Looking back,
Not my life, for 20 years.
Okay.
But before that, I had something else. But it's all on the same line.
Yes.
Actually, I wanted to touch on a subject that you were mentioning earlier. You thought that this podcast was about censorship. Let's talk about that. Why did you think? Was it the whole social, cultural justice art aspect of it, or was there something that you wanted to highlight?
No, I think it's very important to speak about that. And I think going by the title, I thought, wow, this is such an interesting exhibition, and what an interesting subject to talk about, and how to use art as not as a weapon, but as a platform. Like I said, and the thing what Anak-Anak Kota is doing, it's very, very hard because you don't get, whether it's funding or governments, but we cannot wait for governments. And I would like all of you to spend money either sponsoring Anak-Anak Kota or buying tickets for your young children, nephews, nieces, grandchildren to be exposed to the arts and culture. You don't have to wait and see.
Just bring them along. But when it comes to the topic of censorship, let's talk about general, not any one specific country or not. Like, how does that, in your mind and opinion, like, just ruin things when people are just not able to express themselves, when it's all just, this is the mold, and it's not necessarily a governmental thing. Like, I sometimes also see censorship within cliques of people, where you're among friends and maybe you like Taylor Swift, but everybody likes, I don't know, punk rock, whatever it may be. And the moment you say you like Taylor Swift, that in itself is like censorship.
I mean, we have lapisan, we have layers. At the top level is the government censorship of thou shall not do this. No. And then there's self-censorship where you don't want to get into trouble. And then there's censorship where, okay, my friend doesn't like this, I don't like this, so then you censorship. I think it's very difficult if we have a lot of barriers for artists. If there's all these barriers that comes before you being creative. But on the other scope is we do live in a very sensitive country. I'm a Malay and I can tell you, you don't fight the Malays. You win them over. Because fighting, you will lose. You just have to educate and win them over. Don't fight.
Maybe on top of this is I think we are really lack of dialogue. Actually, we don't know how to talk to each other. It's not just the language. Do I just get you out and minum kopi?
You mean like right now?
How we actually even talk to another friend who are actually different cultural background than us? I'm speaking of the young people. This is really direct from them. It's like, how to even, do I text them? Do I text what language? So small thing actually is actually with them, like how do I even, what food? When we have a very simple program, sometimes I say, can you imagine that we're gonna do a food festival for everybody? Things that you need to think about. Whoa, what is it? Is it halal? No, it's not just about halal. It's so much more other things. So we like to do things that are related to food is because they really relate to it and there are so much question. It's not just about halal, right? I said, yeah, what other things? Go and ask. Is it vegetarian? Is it more? Is it religion and all? So I think the dialogue is we really don't have the how-to. So I think that's where, when I say platform, it's not just a program that I understand the history. It's actually putting certain assignment that they really have to go out and try to ask this question that sometimes they scared to ask.
Like, what would the program look like theoretically?
Since you mentioned about Bansan, so we actually bring Bansan, the board game, to school so that they play the game. Board game now is very trendy, right? Everybody play. But play is just off. So we relate it to the nearby market. So the children have to check out all the prices. Who are the vendors? Where all the local dishes and who eat and who cooked it. The local ingredient, for example, santan, where we got it, why the price is so high, why you couldn't get it during Thaipusam. And when they know, oh no, Malaysia no longer want to grow it, we have to get it from Indonesia. So that's where they actually get real. But where can I get santan if I want to eat my curry mee? If I want to continue eat, and they found out the 10 dishes they like, 9 out of the 10 all have santan. So that's where they really relate. So, oh no, I really want to continue eat my favorite food. But how? So I think that's where we want to just not looking at things like, oh, this is culture, this is history, but it's actually relate to my everyday food that I'm eating. Oh, you mean a food festival is related to different people? Yeah, so I think we bring down to like not like elite, like, you know, kind of like only recorded, but it's like daily. That's why we work with Luma together to create Bansa, is where a lot of dialogue could happen just within a small kind of components. So we could actually take it and see how the kids create curious to be more curious about things, about other culture. So I think that's where we want people to talk to each other more. So I think that's how a bit more than saying that what is let's say censorship is already there. Don't just complain about that, but we create platform so that they start to ask questions that they actually worry to ask to their teacher. But they are opening it up and ask us, or maybe ask a vendor. So I think that's where we want to push the boundary a little bit more, so that people feel more at ease to ask questions, to ask questions that they don't know, but not to say stupid or, you know, you shouldn't ask that question. I don't think any question is stupid. It's basically just to create that kind of a conversation and understanding. Yeah.
What you said is all, like Joe said, creating a safe space in all those festivals and all that, and you talk about conversations. They're all related. I think it's less productive if we talk about just censorship as a thing, you know, whether dichotomous thinking again, you know, whether you can say something or not. It's actually more like a negotiation. It all goes back to trust again. Why censorship exists in government originally? Because you don't trust the people. Basically, it's things of trust. The people don't trust the government. So it's not about any political views. It's just about, it's a negotiation, you know.
I don't know. I think it is controlled. It is the government trying to control the situation. It's not a dialogue. It's not trust. We have no choice. I really like what Sifu here said. It's about actually teaching young people to think, to be able to analyze, why do I like this? Or why is this wrong for me? God gave us brains. I mean, even as a Muslim, I question things. You know, I don't want to just say, I have to take this carte blanche like this. I think we need important teachers. I mean, we all love our teachers for having given us that magical thing of, wow, think.
Perhaps we can think of society as... Oh, sorry.
I think the important part is we understand the diversity, and also, you know, if I think everybody here is into this cohesiveness and all that. But the question is that how we incorporate it into our daily activities. One of the things I also observe is that when we actually have any event, recently we had the Children's Day, okay? And we actually invited different cultures to come in to perform and all that. I think what is missing is not just a performance, but also the understanding of the performance. You know, most of the time they'll say, okay, we're going to have a Borea group up there. But there's not much of an understanding. Why do we put a Borea group up there? What is the reason, you know, Borea is in Penang? What is behind it? There's not much narrative. It's just, okay, sekarang dijemput. Okay, kumpulan Borea untuk naik atas. Lepas tu tepuk-tepuk. The children, they'll say, what are we doing?
Yes.
We are just observing somebody, tak. But I think that narrative... Good afternoon, CM.
Yeah, actually, I was about to say that. Can we take a break for a moment? I would like to announce the arrival of our Chief Minister. And of course, Waibi Zairil as well. I'm so sorry. That was a really good point. I was trying my best to find a way to get it. No, but you're right. You're absolutely right. It comes down to, like what you were saying, you know, maybe our younger generation, they don't have the skills to truly express. You know, we just want to be nice and not stick out as well. And then for you, you were saying that when you have all these cultural performances, it's like superficial.
Yeah,
you see a
very-
Borya performance, you clap,
Yeah.
and there's nothing transcendent about that at all.
So there should be a strong narrative, about this culture. And this is actually when we educate and also bring it up to the front that we are so diverse and it's actually with us. So don't be shy away from that. So that sort of understanding must be there. And in fact, it doesn't just touch the children, but the parents who were there. Because it's also education for them, say, wow, actually we didn't know that. But I think that part about giving more meaning to performances, putting up the correct narrative, and also seeing the value they bring together, if it's going to be the direction about social cohesiveness, then the narrative should be about that, if that's what we want.
Can I touch on that? It's very important what you just said. You look at Chitra Warna, we spent 30 million in one day. What is the legacy and impact from that? Exactly like putting on shows, where you put on shows, the children have no understanding why. And then this favorite thing of tokenism. Or just because we're Malaysia, we have to have Malay, Chinese, and Indian.
Yes.
We can't. We have to have all three, even if it's just a token. I don't believe so. I think it's very important.
Yep.
I like what you've said. I think it's very important to educate. Why are we doing the wrong thing? What is our historical, or Borya, or P. Ramlee? We can't just have P. Ramlee and Borya as the two element that's significant in Penang. Why P. Ramlee? We need to really study the entire lapisan or the layering of culture.
Yes.
Talking about Borya reminds me of when Borya start in Penang. I used to go and see where there's a whole huge of kampong people. They bring their veggie products there, and at the same time they have Borya thing, and that I don't see anymore in Penang.
Yep.
It was there when the harvesting was once a year.
Yeah.
So once the harvesting is over, they bring all their goods, come down to Penang, mostly from Kedah. They have all the best papayas, best vegetables, best Borya, and that's where I learned about Borya. But when they came about with double cropping, and then they had artificial fertilizers, all the event stopped. So one part of the Malay farmers' culture disappeared. Penang don't have all that anymore. You can see once in a while in the TV or in KL.
I think you. Oh, Joe.
Actually, I wanted to add something to that.
Borya is my favorite subject at the moment
Uh-huh.
because the Malays here are pushing for Borya as a UNESCO is the thing. But Borya is not a global art form yet. So we really need to think, how do we bring it to the next level where Borya can be like Makam music. You can perform Makam music all over the world. So Borya as it is social commentary, not the dancing, not the sequins, not the flowers. So the wittiness of communities then making fun of government, making fun of day-to-day occurrences, making fun of whether it's artists or politicians. That was the funny part. That was the Tukang Karang was the most important person. The storytelling was the most important thing in Borya, not the dancing, that was the secondary. So I think I've actually called JKKN to do workshops on Borya. In order for Borya to go to the next level, to be at UNESCO level, you need to think how do you sustain it on a global level. Tak ada dana, tak ada Borya.
Okay, go ahead.
Actually, talking about Borya, because we had workshop, just to change a little bit, we had the master to teach a Borya in a normal way where always the adults write everything, tukang karang, everything. I was like, why the children cannot write their own story? So we had a workshop for 3 months. The children write about bullying in the school. But using the format, because it's social commentary, then they say, we are having this problem, we're in school. I would like this to be attended to. So the whole story, everything is about Borya, it's colorful, everything, but it's colorful that, hey, I'm having this problem in my school. Take a look at this. It was actually, I think, about 4 years ago, we actually did that. I think that's where also because Borya is always with the people. And then
This current story, it's actually exactly like rap.
Yeah.
Rap is social commentary. Rap is now. Rap is current. So I've always asked them, look at rap and Borya and look at the similarities there. That's where it is. It's social commentary. Clever, witty.
Actually, I would like to add to that. So you can disagree with me, but I'm going to bring something from when I was working in the entertainment business. So when I was managing new artists or creating a new girl group, one of the main questions we always try to answer is how can we make this cool? Those were the exact words. And I think one of the main problem with that we're seeing, and a lot of the questions I was asking you earlier, how can we transcend to the international, bring our locals to the international? Do you think it's because we didn't do what the Japanese and Koreans did? We didn't make samurais cool, right? Sorry, the Japanese made samurais cool. We should have made like the Laksamana cool. You know, we should have really highlighted the glorious aspect of our local history. Like, for example, I know Japanese history because it's in video games, movies, TV shows. Shogun came out. I know so much about the shogunate now that I shouldn't have. But do you think as artists, instead of complaining, and we're in a room of people who execute, so I'm not talking about you guys, but I meant the majority of artists who sit down and complain. And like what you said, we shouldn't rely on the government. We should do it ourselves. Should they get off their loins and actually make a comic book, make a movie, make our culture cool, and then people would get involved in it, and not necessarily just locals, those from other countries as well. We're just not doing that. Do you think that's a great way of observing?
No, I think there's something significantly wrong with us here, is we're always dependent on government for funding for Dana. I sit on 3 panels, My Creative Venture, Think City, and Yes, and Hazana, and I tell all these people who apply for grants, will you still be doing this if there's no grants? And if the answer is, I said, don't do it, stop. You don't have the passion, don't do it. No, because in other places of the world, if you really want to do something, you have to work. You work as a waiter, you find the money for it. The idea is not to change culture, repackage culture for what is current so that young people can appreciate it. Like if you get Joe Fislow to do a Boria thing, work with a Boria thing, can you imagine how sexy that would be?
Very. I think it would be. But Joe, do you agree? Because in this room, you're literally the only person I know who created something international and branding-wise we still do every year. Is that the thought process you contributed when it came to art? That it should be sexy as
I'll give you one example. There's a real famous global choreographer who went to China, worked with Shaolin monks, did a show called Sutra. It has traveled the world. Now, in its 15th year, still traveling the world, based on Shaolin martial arts. Now, why can't we do Silat? Why can't we do Wayang Kulit? So we have all the wonderful, rich traditional elements. We just need to find a new way to have a dramaturg or to repackage it, to make it sexy and current, and young people want to see it.
Yeah. So I'm the usual guy who checks the time on the podcast.
Oh, actually, thank you.
So I think what we gather from all the seemingly different discussion is actually one theme, which is we need a richer, accurate narrative. So that fosters a collective understanding of ourselves as a society. Whether it's Boria, whether it's art, or even Ronggeng, whatever, they are all certain narratives, which was also discussed in the Georgetown Literary Festival. I think why we sometimes are very hard on ourselves is because we don't realize that our country is not an excuse. It's not, our country is still young, to be honest.
Very.
So I think a more productive way to think of it as maybe we are now teenagers, slightly rebellious teenagers. We're definitely not adult yet. But you look at, when we talk about Korea, South Korea, for example, remember in 86, I think, when the Olympics started, when they first opened up, they were a dictatorship. But then the South Korean culture is cool now. It's just a growing up stage. I think our time may come eventually. But what's heartening in Penang, we can be a change, is that Penang historically has a lot of people doing things without asking for help. Yeah, that's what we discussed before. We just don't complain, we just do it. Like this podcast, it's not supported by anything. It's just Mo and I started, hey, we need a place funded, we get everybody from biologists, writers, coffee shop owners. So we just want to create a space. We just do it. And a lot of times Penang is about, let's just do it. Although Nike might sue us for that. Yeah. But yeah, I think our team here is about, I see that sometimes the narrative is not because our narrative is wrong. That I brought it up before in my article and also in the Georgetown Festival, is that sometimes there are no narratives yet because you have to do research. Like you can't just make up a narrative. You have to research. And sometimes it's okay to say, we are not quite sure yet, okay? And if you jump the gun and make up a narrative, I'm talking from history point of view, that's not helping anyone. So I think it's just this is a Malay values, sabar, yeah, sabar, sabar. Sometimes jumping the gun, yeah. I think maybe Guna, since this is really about your wonderful celebration of your life, you have the last word.
Before the last word, let me make you aware of, in Malaysia, you have the world longest two world cultures meeting in Malaysia. And if you can harness them properly, don't just look at the Western world and use that alone. You can use it, adapt it, and adopt it and adapt. Adopt and adapt is the word. That you can adopt Indian culture and adapt it to Malaysia. Adopt Chinese culture and adapt it to Malaysia. Malaysia, we have the Malays, adapt it. So it is how you want to mix it and make it art worthy.
Well said. And everybody, thank you for joining us on episode 1 of season 2, People of Penang podcast. I hope you guys don't mind to close it. Chief Minister, if you may, would you like to say a few words to the audience and everybody here? If we're allowed to. Ladies and gentlemen, our Chief Minister.
I was invited to come for the opening, which I did not. The organizers thought they have invited me for the closing, which I did not receive the invitation. But anyway, I'm here this afternoon, and I bumped into Zariel. I don't know why he is here. So I am going to recycle the closing remark, prepare for the closing. So good afternoon, friends, to Gunabalan and Chong Eng and family members. So this exhibition entitled Social Cultural Justice Art is coming to a close shortly. And I want to congratulate you for this solo exhibition. For the very first time after so many decades indulging and loving art and coming up with so many pieces here. When I know you many years ago, you were doing sculpture more than painting, I believe. So you have also transformed and transitioned from the early days to what you have produced for this exhibition. And we also witnessed the PoPCast, People of Penang podcast. And although we were late, I believe some of the conversation have sparked some interest with all of us. So Guna, thank you for this inspiring, thought-provoking exhibition. This collection of arts goes beyond mere visual beauty. It captures the essence of social justice, the struggles of marginalized communities, and Guna is one example of marginalized community in a marginalized world. That means he suffered double jeopardy because I think, as I say, many decades of work in the art space, you were always in the fringe and never in the mainstream. So we can understand that you very wanted to showcase what you have done over the years and accumulating in this exhibition. So congratulations. And your arts and the sole purpose is to give a voice every picture there is a voice that you want to represent and share. So I hope that we are sensitive enough to listen and capture the voices that you want us to hear. So there are a lot of stories from your artwork, a lot of story about sacrifices, resilience that have shaped our society. It reminds us that social justice is not a destination, but a continuous journey. A journey that requires empathy, understanding, and collective action. I would have thought that you have ended the journey many years ago. You don't want to be producing, but to my surprise, you blossom in your senior years. Congratulations once again. So we also have initiative for this People of Penang podcast. We continue to celebrate the storytelling in the community. I think I heard about the spirit of Penang people. Just do it, let's do it. And there are a lot of let's do it, just do it happening throughout our society. And that's why so many things have been done over the years. So congratulations for this initiative. And also to Hidden Gems, Hindu Sangam, MAH Penang chapter for collaborating in this effort. Let this event serve as a bridge between art, culture, and conversation. A reminder that everyone has a story to tell. And every story matters. I see people from Penang walkabouts. I have not joined you in any walkabout, but I'm following your walkabouts. And some of you went overseas recently. Yeah. I just not only walk about in Penang, but overseas as well.
They are actually promoting Penang. They
overseas.
t-shirts,
So thank you everyone for this opportunity to say a few words. Congratulations to Chong Ing as well for being a faithful companion to Gunabalan the last 40 over years. Last 40 over years. Thank you very much, and we hope to see each other again in another space and event. Thank you.
Yang Amat Berhormat, can we ask you for one favor? We would like you to sign the shirt.
Yeah, we kind of started a new tradition. So every episode, the guest has to sign a shirt, and
Yes.
you're a pretty important guest for us. And could I also invite YB Zyril if you could sign the shirt? I know you're as a guest, but it'd be cool. Just to commemorate episode 1 of season 2.